Okay, here's my welcome, my weekly welcome to BizTalk Weekly. What's up there?
Good to see you again, Keith.
The same, I'm trying to get us a consistent, well, Joe Rogan. If you ever watch Joe Rogan, he's got this rotating head. It's very annoying, but it's like where you are.
You recognize it, right?
Yes, well, that's what brand is all about. It's like
right.
doing something that people recognize. Oh, that sounds familiar. Well, that looks familiar.
Yeah.
So, how was your week?
It was good. Yeah, it was good. Yep.
Yeah, well,
Here we are into Tuesday again already.
Yeah, I know. Every time I turn around, it's Friday, it's Monday, it's Friday, it's Monday, and then oh, thank God for Tuesdays. We love our Tuesdays.
We do. I've never looked forward to Tuesdays so much as I have since we started BizTalk Weekly.
I feel the same way. It's like Tuesdays used to just be shitty.
Right.
So today's topic, so as you and I were talking earlier, there's a lot of fear around entrepreneurship, and understandably. So what I wanted to try to delve into is that what's reasonable fear and what's unreasonable fear. When should you be afraid? What can you do to avoid being paralyzed by the fear?
Yeah. That's really the key, right?
Yeah. So it's like when you're afraid to do anything and you do nothing, it's worse than doing something. You listen, if you don't do something, they say nothing will happen. But actually, in the world of entrepreneurship, if you do nothing, okay, can be more risky than doing something. Now,
I totally agree.
I need to explain that a little bit because it sounds weird. Making decisions are not always easy. And the first decision you made when you decided to go into business was a big decision, but you made it.
Right.
Okay. Now the question is, did you think it through enough to make the right decision?
Yeah, in my case, I mean, certainly at the time, I felt like, I've put enough thought into this. I mean, I researched, not only this business, but others as well, and felt like I did my homework. Hindsight's always 20/20, right? So are there things I might have done differently? Yeah, maybe there are. But I think, again, looking back now and second guessing doesn't do any good. So, I'm in business, and I do like what I'm doing when it comes to coaching. So, I felt like I put enough thought into it though to make a decision based on the facts as I knew them at the time.
What was your biggest fear when you were deciding or making that ultimate decision?
I think it's hey, I'm investing into this business, and am I going to be able to get a return? Right. I mean, the financial side of things is where I probably had the biggest fear. I think at the time I didn't recognize, the work it takes to get clients. I mean, there's a lot more work in getting clients than there is in the actual coaching. So it's just something I think you don't realize until you start doing.
That's exactly right. But the fear is that you'll do no business. I'm telling you what. Let me back up a little bit. That was my fear. I went and spent all this money. I opened up a store.
Right.
Store. Everything was nice. Okay. I was ready to go. The place is packed with inventory, and I've told this story where for 3 days I did no business. And on the fourth day, someone bought an eyeglass chain. So it was like, BWP&x. It's like, but let me tell you something. You start to think the worst. It's like, oh my God, what did I do wrong? Or what am I doing wrong?
Well, That's what fear does to us, right? It takes us down to sort of the worst place we can go.
Right. Right. And that can be very paralyzing, because two things can happen. You get paralyzed and do nothing, or you do too much.
Right.
It's like
Right.
everything's wrong, and then you start throwing money at it if you have money, and analyzing a problem when you're not quite sure what the problem is and you have no real experience is an experience in itself.
Yeah. Yeah. I think what you're saying is fear can lead to, paralysis. It can also lead to panic.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And both of those emotions are not good.
Right.
They don't drive intelligent decisions.
Right.
So it's like you're sitting back and you're going, all right, no one's walked in my store for 3 days. Now I advertise, okay, business is open. It's a nice shopping center. But there were some things, it was a brand new shopping center. Even though the anchor tenant, which was CVS, was open, there was a bunch of empty stores. So there were some things that, you're wondering, and it's like, okay, people already know they're going for eyeglasses. They already know where they go. Most people already have a place.
Sure.
Okay, so it's like, all right, everyone's going to the competition. They won't come to me. No one's ever going to come to me. Help, help. What do I do?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think there's, especially as a new entrepreneur, you get certain expectations in your head. And if those expectations don't get met, and they may even be unrealistic expectations, like you're saying, like how quickly can I get the business up and going? And if it's not meeting your expectations, that's what can lead to that fear factor starting to sink in.
Well, this is where coaching and mentorship comes in. It's because if you have someone that you can go to, could be a parent, it could be a family member, could be a sibling, whatever it is, somebody who's been there, done that, they can help calm the fear, okay, and tell you based on their experience whether this is something that you should be worried about, or something that, take a chill pill. This takes time. This is not easy. Again, I'm going to go back to our favorite analogies, which is sports. The best hitter is just gone 0 for 30. Okay, which really is, it's an 8 game span in baseball. But when it starts getting in your head, okay, that it's something worse happening, okay, that's when it becomes problematic. But when let's say what goes up comes down, and vice versa. It's these, life is cycles. I mean, it's and so is business.
Well, think about another analogy, again, sports related, but think of the minor leaguer who's getting called up to the major leagues. And he's had success at the AAA level. Otherwise, he wouldn't be getting called up. But now it's a different ballgame, as they say, right? The competition is better. So now they have to start adjusting their game. So they've had success in what they're doing. Let's say a new entrepreneur had success in being an employee, right? But now they're playing a different game of entrepreneurship, of business ownership.
Yep.
And they have to make that adjustment now to kind of a new playing field.
Yeah, sometimes, and this is rare, but I've seen minor leaguers come up and actually do better than they were doing in the minors, that they rise to the occasion.
Right.
Okay. That there's something about that elevated responsibility, okay, and that they don't, just wilt.
And Keith, I think you could attest to this, but I've seen business owners who weren't good employees, but they're excellent business owners. And the reason they weren't good employees is they didn't take direction well from others. They didn't like working for other people. They didn't like being on that regimen, the routine that comes, I think, with employment. They wanted to be more freelance, to be able to control their own schedule, to, follow their own instincts. And I can think of 3 or 4 people right off the top of my head who were not good employees, but were excellent entrepreneurs.
And so let me ask a question. What made them bad employees?
And maybe bad is too harsh, but I think what they didn't like following a schedule. They didn't take direction real well. They would prefer to give direction as opposed to take it. They felt, I think, kind of like their hands were tied. They had a job to do, so they had tasks to get done, and they couldn't be the visionaries that they ultimately found out they were really meant to be. So, being an employee is not really necessarily a good place for somebody who's a visionary to be, because they're really not asking an employee to be a visionary. They're asking them to do particular tasks, some simple, some hard tasks, but still kind of task driven, right? As an employee, you're kind of driven by your to-do list, your goals and objectives, right? Where a visionary, I think, tends to be much more free flowing, much more, much more kind of, I don't want to say on a whim, working on a whim, but really following instincts, and trying to, achieve a vision as to complete a task.
Yeah, so when someone goes from employee to employer, and because they believed in themselves,
Yep.
somehow they felt, and they'll have their own reasons, they didn't like the way they were treated or managed, the way that the culture, the environment in their job was not conducive to being a good employee. It's so hard to read that, because you and I see things from our own vantage point, and when it comes down to it with an employee, it doesn't surprise me that some what would be considered bad employees become great employers, because they've seen all the things that they hate about employers that mistreat employees.
Yeah.
And they create an environment, okay, that is more employee friendly. They gained an understanding, and I think that comes with experience. And I think that one of the reasons you should go and work for somebody else is to learn what you don't like, if you intend on being a boss one day.
I agree. I think it's interesting what you just said about, visionaries, entrepreneurs, creating an environment where, employees enjoy so much more than, let's say, I'll just say, a non-entrepreneurial company. And that's, you say, what is that? Well, I'm thinking of like an entrepreneurial company. There's a lot of growth. There's a lot of activity going on, right? There's new products, there's new services, very typically very tech savvy, I think, in today's world, versus a company that's more structured. A good year might look like they added 3 or 4% to their top line. They're just more, it's more, I'll use the term smokestack, which used to mean kind of an old stodgy business, from a stereotype standpoint.
You see a
Right.
factory that's got the smoke coming out of it. It's 100.
Yeah, you kind of have the just do as you're told mentality. That's not my job, versus an entrepreneurial environment where everybody's sort of got this esprit de corps mentality that, hey, it's doesn't matter who does it, just as long as it gets done. And 2 very different environments.
Right, one breeds growth, not just for the company, but for the individuals, and the
Yeah.
other creates a toxic environment where the employees will never grow, and
Right.
generally they won't stay either.
Right, especially in this day and age, because they
Right.
don't have
Oh
to.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Millennials and the Gen Zs, they're done. Very
right.
quickly. Even if everything's good, they like to go and experience other things.
Yeah, yeah,
So just to bring it full circle back to fear, because fear is part of life, and we're all fearful of something, you know. So if I asked you, besides the decision to go into business and the fear that surrounds that, what would you say is the biggest fear you had based on a risk that you took?
Well, I think you always have sort of that fear of failure in the back of your mind, right? And failure meaning, 5 years from now, I'm not doing this anymore, as an example. Or failure to make any money doing this, right? Um, I think that was probably my biggest fear going into it. I'm not sure that that's a fear for me today. And I think one of the reasons is I thought about, well, let's say the worst thing I could think of happened. And that is, that my coaching business practice just doesn't go anywhere. I've already learned quite a bit about myself. Um, I think there's things I could take from what I'm doing today into, a different business if that's the direction I would decide to go. So I think in a previous episode we talked about Thomas Edison inventing the light bulb, and it took him, he failed 10,000 times and before he invented it, and he said, no, it just took me 10,000 steps to figure out how to make it work. I kind of feel like I'm starting to develop that mentality that,
It's a great mentality, because the truth of the matter is, you think about when you went to college, okay, and I don't know if you went to an expensive college or whatever it is, there's a cost to going to college. Whatever that tuition is, not everybody gets, scholarships, but it's not what you paid, it's what you got. And
right,
really, which goes to the value of money. It's like we always look at everything as it's all money centric. I'm going into business because I want to make a lot of money, and that was my whole thought process. As opposed to, I want to grow as a person. I want to take on more responsibility. I want to understand what it's like to wake up every day and know that the risk's on me.
yeah,
I'm not dependent upon somebody else. So I sink or swim on my own. So, which gives a sense of control, which is nice. I mean, for me, some people say, no, I don't want that headache. I don't have to get up every day. I know at the end of the week I have a paycheck, and
yeah,
you
yeah.
know, and that's fine.
And that is fine. Yes. Yeah. The last thing you want is somebody going into business who isn't a business owner. I mean, who doesn't have the right um, kind of disposition to be a business owner. That's a disaster.
You have to go into business with the idea that, one, I could lose my money,
Yeah.
okay, by going out of business, and I have to go back and get a job.
Yeah.
So, it's funny because my stepdad would tell my kids this, and he told me this as, I was failing in one of my businesses. And he says, before you make a decision, what you ask yourself, what's the worst case scenario? Okay.
Mhm.
If you can live with the worst case scenario, then it's okay to take that risk.
Right. Right.
Okay?
And I thought about that a lot.
Yeah. I mean, because the truth of the matter is, it's like you go and make an investment in anything. I mean, you buy a house, okay? You bought it in an up market, okay? And all of a sudden the market goes down and you got to sell.
Yeah.
Okay, selling in a down market. So you
Yeah.
never recoup the loss of that money. because you have to sell now. For whatever reason, you have to sell.
Yeah.
So now the question is, are you going to spend the rest of your life thinking that, that was a bad decision? No, you made the decision at the time. You had a young family, you wanted a house, you wanted a backyard, you wanted all the things that come with owning a home.
Mm-hmm.
This is, again, these are the things that you grapple with when you're talking about making big decisions.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you were talking a little bit before about that business ownership and that fear factor. And, already in my business, after connecting with you, I've even started to pivot a little bit by adding some other products into, a coaching portfolio, so that, that's not something I was thinking about a year ago. I just thought I'd be coaching, right? But then you and I got connected. We started talking about having additional kind of resources available to our clients, being a problem solver, as opposed to necessarily a coach. Not that a coach can't be a problem solver and vice versa, but just having more opportunities to, present to clients. And again, that's something where I've kind of pivoted from just over the last few months. And is it going to work out? We'll see, right? But I think that's, again, one of those things about, I wasn't in a place where I was paralyzed, because I was able to make that decision to do that. And yet it's not a panic either, because I felt like it was fairly well thought out and carried, relatively low risk at that point.
I feel like life is a series of pivots. It's not like, there's like a straight line, and you just go from one step to the next. Like, you meet someone, decide to get married, you don't know if you'll be married forever, or there's so many different stages of your life and relationships and your experiences. And to me, I think that's what makes life so interesting, is that you have the unknown, which can be scary, but it also brings a level of excitement, because if you're focusing on what positive things, if you have this dark personality where everything is doom and gloom, that's a little different. I guess I got it from my mother. She was always very up,
Yeah.
She had that up personality. My mother-in-law, on the other hand, was very, very, very dark. Everything was, half empty, not half full.
Yeah.
So,
well, and that's what I think, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, you get to define what success looks like. It's not, nobody else tells you what success looks like. They may have their definition of success, and they may try to, put it onto you. But only you, in my case, only I get to decide what success is. And, as I've started up this coaching business, I mean, I've had a number of things I can look at and point to and say, boy, that was really a success. Have they all resulted in, financial success? Not necessarily, but relationship building, problem solving, kind of you meet somebody and you help them solve a problem. Maybe they never become a client, but boy, it sure feels good to help folks work through, an issue or a challenge that they're facing, and see them get on the right road.
just as you're talking through that, I was thinking of a story, and I've mentioned Gary Vaynerchuk, who's this global marketing, mostly digital marketing guru. He tells a story of, he worked for his dad. They emigrated from Russia, and his father had a wine and liquor store. And from a very young age, he worked for his father. He worked for his father till he was around 31. And then he went into running the marketing and media. He built business from 3 million to like 60 million, all online, by the way. He started.
It's impressive.
Very impressive. But he tells a story about a client, he talks about giving without expectation that it'll come back to you.
Mhm.
So one of the customers wasn't a big spender, but he found out through, I think it was through social media, that the guy was a huge Chicago Bears fan. So at the time, I think Jay Cutler was their quarterback. So he did this almost as an experiment. He bought a signed jersey, cost him a few $100, and he shipped it to the guy. And nothing happened. He didn't hear anything. And it's like, and it wasn't that he was expecting anything, but all of a sudden one day he gets a call from his I don't know, it was the head of marketing in the wine store. He says, "You're not going to believe this. We just got an order for like $40,000 of this expensive wine from the person that you sent it to." So
that's a good story.
Yes, but the thing is, the reason I thought of it was because you're talking about that, you do something for somebody, you don't know, you gave an advice to somebody that you're not coaching them, you spoke to them, you had a nice conversation, you gave them some free advice without the expectation. Not that you didn't have the hope, but you didn't say, you know what, I'm doing this so that they'll do X. If I do this, they'll do something for me. You never know when you're going to get a referral, okay, where someone says, "Hey, Joe Smith recommended, you said that he didn't do business with you, but he said that he thinks you could really help me based on the conversation you had with him." This happens. I mean, this is why if you do the right thing, no matter what, it's going to come back to you.
Yeah.
Shape, manner, or form.
There's a book out there called The Go-Giver. Which is a little play on words, right?
My brother gave it to me.
Yeah, the saying is a go-getter, right? Somebody who's really takes the initiative. But this is about the go-giver, somebody who's really trying to, whose first priority is really to give and not receive, right? But knowing, hey, if I give and give and give, that's going to come around and serve me well at some point in the future. You don't know how, like that story of the Bears uniform. I mean, he didn't know how that was he didn't know if that was going to result in anything for himself. And he didn't care, right?
No,
he did it because he wanted to.
Listen, of course, we hope that it turns into something. It could have been just he recommended somebody who spent $40,000, so.
Right.
When I started my business in the eyeglass industry, the one thing you see a lot of people come in, they lost a screw. I'm sure this has happened to you. A pair of glasses, screw falls out, you need a screw, and you go to the nearest eyeglass store, even if it's not your own. Hey, can you fix this? There are stores that it's $2, it's $1, it's $5. And when I would see stuff like that, really?
Yeah.
To me, that was the easiest way to make friends. You fix something for somebody, whether it's a screw or it's you would make an adjustment. You give away an eyeglass cleaner. Sure enough, they see that you're nice. People want to do business with nice people.
Yeah.
So to me, that's one of the best qualities you could possibly have as a business owner. Who you are as a person. When you treat people right, it's going to come back to you.
Well, I think you've talked about it repeatedly with your store, that you always wanted to make sure folks left there feeling good about, even if they didn't buy anything, right? Just feeling good about the experience. And sometimes it's just like you said, it's doing something, it's cleaning their glasses when they come in. It's saying, hey, I see you're wearing glasses. Do you need it? Can I adjust them? Make sure that they're, level and clean. And, oh yeah, that'd be nice. right? And they may walk out of the store and not buy anything, but you've made an impression on them. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's, and I've used this expression probably with us, but I use it all the time, is that you don't get a second chance to make a good first impression.
Right.
And it's really true. And I guess, I think I was a born retailer. I love dealing with people and creating that relationship. And of course I want them to spend money with me. It's how I pay my bills.
Right.
But there's something that feels really good when you service somebody and they come back.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
means you did something right. So I'm going to bring it again back to the biggest fear of what's the worst thing that could have happened by investing in a Focal Point franchise is that you lost your money. But if you think about, and I started to use this analogy about when you get a college education, you spend 4 years and you spend $100,000 on tuition, room and board, and you get out and you go, okay, what did I get out of that? Well,
Yeah.
most people look at it just from the book part of it. But there's a whole different part about the meeting with people, making friends, learning, and it's very hard to put a value on experience, a monetary value on experience.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's just so well said, Keith, that I think, part of what I'm going through is the experience of being a business owner for the first time. And like you just said, whether my business is successful from a financial standpoint or not, I'll carry that experience with me now for the rest of my life. And
Because the experience is there. It's not going away. And if, let's say coaching wasn't for you, okay, that's what happened. You know what? But I can do anything. I mean,
I know.
this last year or whenever it is, 2 years, I have experience now. I've learned so many things about business. The thing that you learn more than anything is how do you survive when things are not good?
Right. But I think there's been so many, we've talked about them in our podcast here over the many weeks, but there's been so many times where we've talked about, entrepreneurs are not always successful on their first try. In fact, it's rare that they're successful on their first try. So you'll hear about an entrepreneur, and then you start to do a little investigating on them, maybe a little research. You find out, well, this is the third business they've started. The first two went belly up.
Well, there's more to be learned in failure than there is in success. So
right.
I don't know.
And I think when you can carry that kind of mentality, it helps with that fear factor, right? Yes. All of a sudden, the fear factor kind of goes to the back of your brain, and you push these kind of thoughts to the front of your brain, and it just makes it easier to deal with from a business ownership standpoint.
Wasn't it FDR who said there's nothing to fear but fear itself?
That's right. Yeah.
It's
after Pearl Harbor, right?
Yeah. Because fear can really be debilitating. I mean, it can really paralyze you to the point of like doing nothing.
Right.
I mean, so that this is part of, what I love so much about entrepreneurship is that you get, you're going to experience the good, the bad, and the ugly. Well, hopefully you get some of the good too. Yeah. But it's just part of your growth. I talk about entrepreneurship with such great feelings and excitement because I know what it is to go through the trip. It's like, it's like going on I've been on a 40-year ride. It's like, okay. and that ride had a lot of bumps. It's like a roller coaster. You're going up, and then there's a crash. There's some of the crashes you caused yourself. Some of the crashes were unforeseen. It's like all this stuff is, I guess it's part of who I am. Not everybody likes that.
Mhm.
And that's probably why not a lot of people actually take the plunge, because they are too afraid
Yeah,
the
yeah,
risk.
yeah. They don't like the unknown. They don't like the fact that, they're not going to have a regular paycheck every 2 weeks, right? And again, there's nothing wrong with that, right? That is
Absolutely not.
not being critical of those individuals at all. It's knowing yourself, right? And knowing, can I, can I live with this sort of the unknown more so than the known? Can I live with the fact that, hey, 1 week I might make, a bunch of money, and the next week I might not make any, right?
Yeah, and that's where the roller coaster comes in, is that
Yeah,
you're guaranteed a paycheck,
right.
and the good news is that there's no limit on what you can earn.
That's right.
The
Yeah.
bad news is, you better find the limit on what you can lose.
Right.
Otherwise, you're in real trouble. But it's the life and times of an entrepreneur. I think it's something that is really a great experience if you're willing to take the plunge.
I totally agree. Yeah.
So having said that, are you happy you became an entrepreneur?
As we were just talking, I am. I mean, are there tough days, challenging days? Absolutely. But you know what? Working through those days, that's in itself, that's enjoyable, especially when you get to the other. Sometimes when you're in the storm, it's not so enjoyable. But you get through it, you work through an issue, and all of a sudden it's like, wow, you kind of find out something about yourself that you didn't know, kind of what you were capable of doing. So um, I'm glad I've done it, and again, that goes regardless of sort of the financial success of my business. Not that I don't plan on being financially successful, I do, but there's other measures than just the financial part of it.
Look, when Edison was inventing the light bulb, I would venture to say that money was not the driving force. It was the excitement of creating something that would
Right,
actually be of value,
right.
and I think that entrepreneurs to some extent are inventors.
Mhm.
We have a vision of how we see our success, and how we're going to become successful comes in a lot of different shapes and forms.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right that a lot of times an inventor doesn't really motivated by the fact that this might be something that they can monetize and make money on. They're motivated by the fact that they just want to invent whatever it is they're working on, and they're driven by that.
And that's
And
part
I
of the
think,
creative process. If you have a creative mind, you're always
yeah,
thinking about, okay, what can I do? How can I do this? I love the creative part of marketing, because I
yeah,
know marketing is visionary to the extent that you're crafting things that will create, you know, actions by others. If the message is right, people will respond, you know.
yeah.
So
And there can be creativity in all parts of our business, right?
yeah,
Operations, sales,
yeah,
marketing,
absolutely,
you know,
absolutely.
problem solve. When it comes to problem solving, that's where we can really be creative. And even in the most mundane area of business, we can get creative in terms of how we solve problems.
Because not everybody sees what's happening when they're on the inside looking out.
Right. Right.
All right, my friend. So this was very interesting. This is something we probably can have lots of future sessions on, and invite people that, again, other entrepreneurs, which we intend to do. So we will end this week, and thank you. And I look forward to next Tuesday as usual.
Me too. Good discussion, Keith.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thanks, Greg.